So I have explained to you guys how Dave Rubin is a sellout for the Koch brothers' money. Now, he is sponsored by Learn Liberty. Learn Liberty is essentially one of the groups that the Koch brothers funds. Um, Now, what you're going to be seeing here is essentially damning evidence that Dave Rubin is a sellout, a complete sellout. Now, let's look at what Dave Rubin said about Bernie Sanders before he partnered with Learn Liberty. Check it out.
James Lay asked, how likely do you think that Bernie Sanders will be the next president? If you guys know anything about me at this point, you know that I do like Bernie. He's the guy that pretty much everything he says, I pretty much agree with. I don't know that we could pay for all of it, but I'm pretty much there. Like Bernie, I have a hard time making fun of him, except for the Larry David stuff, which SNL's handling pretty well. How likely? Unfortunately, I find it very hard to believe that sort of an old socialist from New Hampshire is going to be the next president. I don't necessarily see it, but don't lose hope. People get angry every time I say that. That doesn't mean that this thing is not good, because what he can do is, look, if it's going to be Hillary on the Democratic side, he can push her left or pull her left, right? And what he can also do beyond that is change the dialogue even after, whoever, even if a Republican became the next president, some of the social stuff and the money in politics and the 1%, all that stuff, he's made that discussion important. And not everything always comes just because the president's the guy in charge. So try to feel good about that.
So that was before he became, he had a partnership with Learn Liberty. Now, here's an example, and I have many examples to tell you about. One example of what he says today. So Bernie Sanders has sent out a tweet saying, "Here is a New Year's resolution I hope you will share with me. In 2018, we will not only intensify the struggle against Trumpism, we will increase our efforts to spread the progressive vision in every corner of the land." Now, Dave Rubin quoted this tweet and responded saying, "And people who want personal liberty, individual freedom, and small government will fight you every step of the way. The game is afoot." So, notice, in that video clip you just saw, right, he states clearly, he calls Bernie Sanders a socialist, which, by the way, he's not, but that's not important, actually. It gives us more leeway here, because he says he supports Bernie Sanders and he is, in agreement with virtually everything he wants to do. And he says he's a socialist. So he says he's a socialist there, but now he says that socialism is not cool. You guys have seen that video, and now he's talking about personal liberties, individual freedom, and small government after he gets all this money from the Koch brothers. Now, other examples of how he explains how he doesn't support Bernie Sanders. Now, he also sent out another tweet going after Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders was talking about the estate tax, and he says, what right does the government have to tax this money after it's already been taxed? Which again, he should already know the 16th Amendment, and he doesn't know that, of course. And also, I just covered him talking to Colin Moriarty, and saying that he will vote for Trump in 2020, and he will not have any problems doing so if, quote, crazy progressives like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are the choices. So in the span of about 2 years, 2 and maybe like a month or something like that, he has gone from supporting a socialist, in his own words, by the way, in his own words. He said Bernie Sanders is a socialist, which Bernie Sanders is not a socialist, by the way, but he says that he supported a socialist, or who he thought was a socialist, right? And he wanted these social programs. And then in the span of a few years, after he gets a partnership with Learn Liberty, now he's all about small government and individual liberty and, fuck the estate tax, even though the estate tax is barely used in any cases, and it's only for extremely, extremely rich people. And he's calling Bernie Sanders a crazy progressive. So, and by the way, Bernie Sanders has, kept his positions the same for literally decades, and I'm talking decades, 30, 40, 50 years. So there's not really a reason to change, and this just proves that he is a massive sellout.